I'll give this man.
This crowd here, and you finally come around shaking hands with your own kinfolk, and everybody becomes a sea of faces as governor. And we elected the President Franklin Roosevelt 4 times in a wheelchair. You don't govern Alabama with your legs, you govern it with your head. And you know, and the reason we're in the shape we're in today in this nation is because for the last 10, 20, or 30 years, we've had so many people in Washington who were paralyzed in the head instead of the leg. And I can assure one reason you ask me, why do you run for governor again? Well, I run for one reason. I want a job in the first place, and the polls show I can win. That's a good reason to run. And second, I do not know of any time in Alabama's history or any other state's history when experience is more necessary than today. In this recessionary period in which we live, which we have the second most highest unemployment rate in the nation. And therefore, another reason I run is this. This is carried worldwide, my campaign, your campaign. I saw papers yesterday from Israel, Pakistan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia about George Wallace's and your campaign, the average citizen's campaign of Alabama. And I tell you, they thought they were through me, the specialized personal interest, moneyed interest in this state, and the polls show that I'm running well among all groups except the rich, your governor known. And whenever I went abroad in 1975 and invited the top industrialists of 5 countries to come to see me, they came to see me. I saw the heads of state because they knew who your governor was because you made him known. I didn't make myself known. As a result of that, American, and they asked me to speak because they knew that I'd spoken out on these matters years before. And so these folks from Detroit, I think all the mental health workers here know and state workers know that I was their friend and I'm going to be their friend when I go back to governor. You know, I drove over going around this big gravel pit over here somewhere. Where is it? Over this way, right over here? Well, when I finished the University of Alabama tonight, and I knocked in the head, the person that knocks you in the head is out of jail before you get to the hospital or the cemetery. And you know, and on Monday morning, they blame the police about the whole of this crime wave today. I cannot promise to do away with it, but I promise you that I've talked about it for years and years and years in Alabama. And we also are going to get this reappraisal of property taxes, that they're raising the people's property taxes by reappraisal. And if they don't get them down before I become the
appraisal situation.
Yes, sir. Speaking about the reappraisal situation, I believe that you should not raise taxes through the back door that way, and that the people ought to have a vote on that tax being raised. And if something's not done about it during this administration, when I become the governor, I'm going to ask the legislature to submit to the people an amendment to roll the taxes back to where they are now, and then if they want to raise that taxes, they can do so otherwise, but don't do it by appraisal.
Would the legislation be in the form of rolling the millage back, or tax exemptions, or homestead?
Exactly the form it will take, but it will take a form. There's no reason in the world to raise by appraisal. You're supposed to raise taxes by a vote of the people, or either by a vote of a legislative body, such as the legislature, or a city governing body, or a county governing body, not through a reappraisal through the Revenue Department of the state.
The reappraisal was ordered by the federal court. How should it have been handled?
Well, actually, it was not supposed to be reappraised until next year, so the Revenue Department asked to be reappraised this year. I don't see any reason for them having to ask it to be reappraised this year, especially during a time of recession when they knew that the reappraisal would go up, and as a consequence, mean more taxes. And therefore, I think that they should have left it alone and not petitioned the court. The Revenue Department should not have to let them do it the second year instead of the third year. They didn't have to reappraise until next year, but the Revenue Department just wanted more money. Well, I can understand that, but we're in a recession now, and we just can't be getting money out of people when they don't have it.
Thank you. The Wallace people have it. Back up. Chris. Yeah. Back up. Yeah, I'm with you, Bill. No, back up.
picture on that. Hey. Hey, cameraman. Well, you take care of that thing, man. Hey.
Yes, it is. It is.
Him for help Auburn University, he came through. All you have to do in Alabama, and the next governor of the state of Alabama, is George C. Taylor.
Well, think about you, I didn't even know he knew me. Well, I'll vote for him. Well, Mama's sick, Mama's working. It's in today. I do know that you folks here in Albany in the future, technology, and whatever, the matter of quality of life and other ways, and I was on the Board of Trustees was because of my commitment to public education in Alabama during those years in which I first was governor to the president of the company. So they called me, the union and workers in lower management part of the plant, some of these people for us. And I said, yes, I know them, and I believe I can. I called the president with the man who was in charge of the matter of dickering between the union and also, and I'm going to continue, we're going to continue to progress in public education because I've been good to Albany University, and I can tell you this, that when I was governor, we did more for Albany University than any governors had ever done in a comparable period of time. I remember one of the things that came when Governor Larry Wallace was governor during a short term. Very a bit proud of that. So you people who in Albany have been told by some folks that Wallace don't think anything but about trade schools, well, they are just as important as anything else also. We've also talked about high technology industry and research and development, and we're going to increase that. Now they talk about teacher salaries. My opponent says teacher salaries, I believe they said, were too high. We've got to get teacher salaries up to where we can have somebody teach math and science in the high schools of Alabama, because in 3 or 4 years you won't have a single science or math teacher in Alabama, and that's a nationwide problem and not just an Alabama problem. They've got 5 million calculus students in high school in Russia. We got 500,000. The Japanese graduate around 70,000 engineers a year, and we are twice as big as they are, and we graduate about 20,000 a year. So you see, my friends, we have much to do in this country in the matter of education. Not only Alabama, but the nation. And when I'm governor during the next 4 years, and we started off in that direction when I became governor, we're going to move forward in it in all facets from kindergarten to the graduate level. And I know that you approve of that, because that is a solution to problems. And I've already called on some of the top people.
Always invited the devil, George Wallace, to come be on his shows with them. 3 people, you know, that interrogated me, and of course they had nice haircuts. Then you become an authority on Bangladesh. You become an authority on everything under the sun. And you know, when you're sitting there, people used to tell me now, when you get on meet the Black Mayors Conference, he said, what are you doing over here? I said, well, I'm speaking to the Black Mayors. I said, that's right. To roll back to what they were now, and they increased them in this year ahead of the proposal, which only the more taxes increase during a time in which we have a recession. That's not the time to raise taxes, my friend. That's the time not to stretch people's budgets any further, because we have too much to say, too many people. Hey, man!
Pete. I'm trying to get home. There's a little lady there. Yeah.
shake this steady hand, we will have a 5
On the wings of love, when Noah had risen of the flood many days, he searched for
'67 counties. All right! You know you can do it. You can do it. All you have to do is when you leave here tonight to get the common sense to vote for George Wallace, and we'll run away with it so far that they'll have...
Again, you don't have to worry about that. And he said, we got to get rid of this man. He'll play havoc. Well, I tell you, he went in the Democratic primary and voted against me because they didn't want the Republicans running against me. And when he signed that pledge, Mr. Blunt said, I pledge to abide by
the nominees of this party that I vote in, but he voted against me, and now he's writing letters for the candidate for the other party, so he doesn't he doesn't keep his pledge. And in my judgment, they went in our primaries this last year to try to select the candidate. I don't blame the other candidate for taking their votes. I would have taken them myself. But I'm glad to know that George McMillan is supporting me for governor because he's the toughest opponent I ever had. He's the toughest opponent I ever had as a candidate I ran against was George McMillan, and I want to congratulate him because he ran an exceptionally fine race and almost defeated me, which of course I didn't want him to do. But I'm glad he's now supporting George Wallace for governor. Well, you know, we were talking about Alabama and the South, and I think this was somewhere up in the Midwest, maybe in Portland if I'm not mistaken. My friends in Alabama used to say that when you gave me up about being dignified, finally one of these men said, "Governor, you sound like you think you're the smartest man in the country." I said, "No, I'm not the smartest man in the country. I'm not even the smartest man in Oregon. I'm not even the smartest man in Alabama, but I'm the smartest in office. But I would like for you to take advantage of that experience that you gave to me and let me be governor again, because during the last 8 years I was governor, we led the Southeast 6 years in new and expanded industry and jobs, and we were second twice. We were second in the Finance Report as being the most desirable state for industry and business. Texas was first, and when I left office, this act, Collie Wallace Cater Act, and I believe I can better get industry. When I went through the days, we didn't educate anybody except those who had money. We said to the average little man who couldn't send his child to Alabama or Auburn, his child. Back in Alabama, well, my friends, they got news coming to them. They are not through with you, nor George Wallace, because I'm going to be your governor. And my friend, but 10 years ago, running for president, I said, we ought to pay attention to the victim, not so much the man who bashes his brains out. A year ago, the Chief Justice made the same speech. He said, we ought to pay attention to the victim instead of the man who bashed his brains out. Well, I told him that 10 years ago, and he wouldn't listen. He ought to listen 10 years ago. You and I in Alabama did. You know, I remember, don't get afraid and shaking in your boots. I'm not running for president. You don't have to worry about that. But that fella up in Maryland sort of got me out of the presidential business for good, I think. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to speak on things in Washington that affect us, like the prayer amendment, which I'm for, about abortion. I want to talk about the farmers' plight, about TVA rates that are so high, they're about to run all the industry out of the TVA Valley because because it became not a good outfit of a yardstick for rates, but it overborrowed, it overspent, it overbuilt, typically of a bureau of the federal government, and therefore you vote the ticket, you vote the straight Democratic ticket, and let us stand up for America and stand up for Alabama. God bless you very much.
Y'all did a good job for us. Good. Give me back that. Just back me up.
Governor? Got one of your friends here. How you doing here? Real long time. Glad Senator Talmadge.
Oh, yes. Good to see you.
Got all those lights on there?
Haven't seen you in a long time, but I'm glad to see you again, Herman.
Thank you.
It's just good to see you again. You're looking great.
So are you?
Feeling all right. I don't know how I look, but I feel all right. always been one of the best, you know. I tell you.
Fine, it's Durham here, too.
Yeah, this is Miss Durden.
Yes, ma'am. I'm glad to see you here. I always loved this man. Yes, sir. We're glad to have you. Good to have you here, too. Sure are. Hi, folks. How are you? Oh, it's good to be with you. See all of you here. How are you? Hi. Yes, sir. Good to see you. How are you?
How are you? And I wish you good luck.
Yes, ma'am. Good to see you. Hi.
In Covington County. We have people from every Bethel Baptist Church here in Dothan. Tony?
God, we come praying also a special prayer for our governor to be elected, Governor George Wallace. God, we pray that you will give him strength. God, we pray that you will give him wisdom, knowledge, and understanding so that he might go in and out before your people and lead them in a way that would glorify not only Alabama, but thee, and that would glorify you and bring blessings to all of the citizens of Alabama. God, we pray that you will stir up the good qualities that are in.
I know we have several here, and these are the people that work hard to try to make your party work. Would you let us recognize...
Worry about in the general election, Harry. He is working just as hard as he can to get these...
All except the ultra-wealthy white. We're running behind among that group, and there are not all that many of those in Alabama. Civic poll showed the day after, a few days after, that he was known and recognized his name by only sell it to us, as Elvin Stanton knows, and we tell him we're going to have scientific pollers. This particular polling man used to, the scientific polls show we are leading. One reason we didn't want to bring them out much was that we didn't want the people to stop working, and because we must work. Now, we can lose this election if we don't work. Now, I saw a Mobile paper the other day, the Mobile Press Register, supporting George Wallace, and it supported Doan in the primary.
Hey, Dave, you getting up to that?
All right, folks.
Good to see you.
Hi. Good to see you. Yes, sir. Thank you very much here. You're very kind. All right, folks.
one song that they did, actually two. This is a number right here. We want to let you... Seriously? Here's your note right here also.
I'm going to vote for him. Well, the little girl would say, well, Mama's sick, Mama's working, Mama's here, Mama's on vacation, Mama's Arabian for Tel Aviv in Israel lately, along with the West European papers. So my friends all broke even with McGovern in New Mexico. My friends, during that time, the reason I was outdrawing the other candidates is in West Germans. And I was saying that in 1972, so on this matter of the unfair trade practices, I believe that in view of the fact that they know that I stood for them in this matter, they know that I spoke for them all through the country, I've been able, since I came out of office, to talk with the presidents of a number of companies. When the city officials and union officials and non-union officials called me in Alabama, any other state, because they'd make more money working for a computer company. And therefore, I'm going to put education and jobs as both a top priority as far as my next administration is concerned. When I came into the college back in the 30s, I had a job and found a job in a boarding house. And therefore, 10 years ago, when I made a prediction that unless we get our hand on this handle of crime, we're going to, in 10 years from now, be hostages in our own home. And that's exactly what we are today. I shall continue to work on the Tennessee Tom Bigby, which got its first appropriation for construction when I was governor, and it will be completed when I'm governor during the next 4 years, and that's going to bring much interest in not only West Alabama, but all of Alabama. But I'm going to speak out on matters like a... If you will go to the polls on November 2nd and vote the straight Democratic ticket, you'll elect George Wallace and the other Democrats, and we're going to send these opponents of ours in this Boulder-rich Republican crowd back where they belong to making some more millions of dollars. Let them go. That's where they're going to go. And I'm going to send mine back to be police chief somewhere in Montgomery, Alabama. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. See what we can do immediately after the election to do the best we can. We may not be able to correct the situation in its entirety, but we must make an effort, and all ourselves would likewise respond in such manner. But I have no way of knowing whether there's any state funds available or even federal funds. We know that there's been a serious economic crunch, in the fact we're already in proration in Alabama at the present time. But I do think that the private sector is going to have to do what they can to help alleviate a situation that could be a very bad situation that could lead even to, as I've said before, some very revolutionary politics left or right. And I'm very concerned about it. That is the elderly and the blind, the handicapped, and the disabled. Of course, they do have some source of income from the government, but we're talking about that have lost many jobs have been lost in industry, and they too will be in the same fix. Well, the scientific poll this morning showed 58 for Wallace, 35 for my opponent, and 7 undecided. I've seen scientific polls of 2 other organizations that almost dovetail. There may be 1 point difference here and there, but also the other 2 polls that were mentioned in the Post-Herald story said the same thing the Post-Herald poll said. But this is of mainly not a poll matter, although there are some people who come to me about this poll that are somewhere here. They've talked to me. If any of y'all want to talk to them, you can talk to them, but that's not in my press conference. I don't have anything to do with that at all.
Strategy for the campaign during this last week that you have in mind, any particular areas that audiences have been targeted or
that I would not support. In fact, I don't know what I would do in either for, as far as that's concerned. The thing I would do as governor would speak out on matters that affect Alabama, supply of money, and
the Ray Evans poll. We would like to show you that the Ray Evans poll, on the times that he does even run a poll, is strictly influenced by money. Most all the people since I've been with him in a year and a half that he has predicted to win, we intend to show that these are the people that have been paying him money. I'd like to refer on to some of the people that we know. This is not hearsay. We know as a fact that they have been paying money for a long period of time, such as Sonny Callahan. Sonny Callahan was paying between $3,000 and $4,000 a month for a period of over a year, some of which was in cash and some in check. We picked up this money. Ray Evans made the statement to both of us several times, because he liked to boast about it, that Emory Former was paying him $80,000 to handle his campaign. When we asked Mr. Evans what the $80,000 was for, he said it was for polling services and to build the mayor's identity in the state of Alabama, like he did for Bob James in 1978. On his new agreement. The last 2 polls that Mr. Evans did that I saw, which was dated, I believe, October the 12th on one, showed Governor Wallace with 65% of the vote, and he came out the next day with a newsletter saying that Emory Former was in the lead. And the most recent one that I saw showed Governor Wallace with 60% of the vote, and he still says that Emory Former is. Well, I wasn't until about 30 minutes ago.
What is your name?
Ma'am?
What is your name?
My name is Gil Red, R-E-D-D. This is my niece, Scarlett Red.
Does Mr. Evans know you are doing this?
No, he does not.
Would a simple subscription make a difference in how you were rated in the poll?
Sometimes he would say if he had, a couple of people in a race and he went in and tried to sell them a poll or somebody else and they didn't buy, sometimes he would say, well, at least he subscribes. So he would go on and, predict them. Sometimes there would be nobody subscribing and he would make a prediction in a certain county because he said it would be beneficial to him because he needed to get into that area. He was not, that known in this particular area.
When did you bring this information to the
It was something, of course, with his, the initials in his last name. It was set up in Gadsden, I can tell you that much.
Do you think you or Mr. Evans, either one of you, have done anything illegal, dishonest, unethical?
Yes, ma'am. I hope that I hadn't, but I feel like that he has.
Get on the plane. I was interested in whether or not you had read the newspapers this morning or watched the news last night about Mr. Farmer's debate. Were you surprised at some of his comments?
I frankly didn't watch it or listen to it. I have no comment on it. I don't know what he said.
You have not read any newspaper accounts?
I haven't read any newspaper accounts.
Okay. About your news conference yesterday in your office, the 2 people that were the Evans poll employees?
The what?
The Evans poll employees?
Yeah. What about it?
Were you aware of what they were going to say?
Well, no, I was not aware of what they were going to say. They had hurriedly tried to tell me some stuff, and I said, well, I don't want to get involved in it. There are going to be some newsmen out here. If you want to talk to them about it, you can do so, but I don't even know what he said. I left.
Yeah. Do you have any reservations about what they did have to say?
No, I don't know what they said.
Okay, they had some comments to make about Mr. Evans' poll being somewhat fraudulent.
Oh, well, that's academic. Everybody knows that. I mean, you know that yourself, don't you? Yes, you do. You know that. You know darn well it is not a scientific poll. It is a poll for those who subscribe and give him money. And that's a fact, and you all know it. And why a reputable television station would even mention a false poll, which is not scientific, is something I don't understand.
Thank you for your comments.
Now listen, don't y'all.
Okay, thank you.